Love from the Vortex. Welcome to Fall into the Vortex with Yolie, where we talk about all things love. Fall into the Vortex with Yolie. Fall into the Vortex.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Fall into the Vortex with Yolie. I am so happy to be here with you today. I am especially excited. My heart be still, because I am with someone whom I love dearly, who has seen me grow and I have watched him grow. Gladston, Patrick Williamson, why don't you tell us who you are? And let me just say, welcome and thank you for being here.
Hey, thank you so much. I feel blessed to, always be in your circle, and, you are a true testament to lifting your community up. So as we grow, we grow together. So, so much love for you, Yolie. My name is Patrick Williamson. I am 27 years old. I'm an equity and inclusion and retention strategist. So I've been working for the Department of Education in New York City for about 6 years now. And I consider myself a community builder, right? Like, a lot of what I do is facilitate spaces for folks, specifically teachers, to investigate their kind of own self-understanding and better understand how their individual lived experience really guides their reason for teaching and their teaching practice as a whole. And so I work in the recruitment and retention of male teachers of color to enter and stay in the classroom. Burnout rates in teaching are highest for teachers of color. Nationwide, I think it's 2% of educators are Black males. And in New York City, the number's around 12%, which is better than the national, but it's still not representative of the 76% Black and Latino students that we serve in New York City. And then, Yolie is always in spaces that we're facilitating, and she knows that, even with the recruitment, if our Black shells still embody the same oppressive, colonized ideology as the oppressor, we're not really embodying the justice we're fighting for. So a lot of my work is really around unlearning and, emancipating minds, right?
Yes.
So that's a lot of what I love about my job. At this phase of my life, I'm realizing that all the work that I've done and continue to do is more about people interacting with people than anything else. In that sense, it's kind of like social psychology guides my approach to community building. And now that with everything being remote, I think that what you're doing here is a testament to, understanding the opportunities that we have to explore what elements of teaching and learning are just stuck in the past and we're holding on to because it's what was passed down to us. And how can we be adaptable to kind of the inevitable trends of society and, just be the change and embody it. So, I appreciate you always.
Hey, y'all, do you see why I'm excited that Patrick is here? May I call you Patrick? Is that okay?
Please. Yeah.
And besides being a strategist, and I see you, Patrick, as a social strategist, as a social media strategist, as an educational strategist, you have a strategic mind. And indeed, you are about healing and emancipating minds. But you don't only do that through your work, you also do it through your work as an artist, and specifically your work as a poet. And so with that, what I want to do, I want to give you a second to kind of sit with maybe something creative you might want to share with us. You don't have to, but what I want to say to those of you, if this is the first time you're tuning in, this is what you're about to experience. So on Fall into the Vortex with Yolie, the beautiful guest comes on, they introduce themselves, and they share with us whatever it is they want to share with us. That could be something creative, or it could be just what Pat just did, of talking about what he's working on and what he's moving forward in his life. After that, I ask each guest, as I'm going to ask Patrick, to read a poem or an excerpt of a poem from Love from the Vortex, the book, and have him talk about why he chose that poem, what significance does it hold for him. And then it's going to be unscripted from that point on. And we'll just have an unscripted conversation for about 20 or 30 minutes, and we'll see where we go. So with that, I turn it back over to you, Pat. Would you like to share something creative, or shall we just right away fall into the vortex? It's up to you.
I'll I'll kind of highlight that, you know, I consider myself a spoken word artist and a digital creator. And I find that like my vision or the way that I feel liberation is through expression, right? And so I'm the co-host of a podcast called Three Educated Brothers, a podcast about all things education through the experiences of three Black men in the field. Yolie's blessed us with her, you know, words and wisdom on the podcast. Definitely check it out. But I just want to highlight like we're in this work fighting for a world that we've never seen before, right? And so in this fight, you know, a lot of doubt comes in where it's like, you know, I don't necessarily know where this is leading because we've never seen it before. But I want to highlight, you know, a lot of my ideology and approach to the work is rooted in this idea of Ubuntu, you know, I am because we are. So, you know, it takes a village, and my role, I feel, and my superpower is being able to grow before your eyes and be vulnerable and transparent about where I currently am, because once you give in to the fact that where you currently are isn't where you're going to be, you stop hiding, you know, you stop feeling like you have to have the answers, and you more so give in to kind of the humility of the process. And so I just want to highlight that and say to everybody that's, you know, trying to find themselves and make their impact and find their purpose, like you're on your way. You're on your way.
Beautiful. Yes. So shall we fall into the vortex, go to the text? And I just want to say this because, Pat, I also know how it works with artists and artists who are in contact with the spirit, that something may hit you in our conversation where you may feel that you want to share one of your pieces, and just know that it is the space for that. So I just wanted to do a clearing for that, to understand, you know, what it is that we're building together, not quite knowing where we're going with this. Okay, so I'm ready if you're ready.
I'm ready, you know. Stay ready, you never have to get ready.
Holla to that. All right, I'm forever the teacher. So what page are you on? And if y'all out there listening, you have your book, feel free to grab the book and read along with us.
Yeah, so if it's all right with you, I actually have two poems that I think couple with each other that I'll read, and they're both, you know, relatively short. So the first one is called Mixed Emotions. It's in the section of Joseph, and it's on page 14. So if you want to go to page 14.
There.
Yes, okay. So Mixed Emotions. I am truly happy that you are happy, yet I'm also sad about your happiness, for if you were experiencing a little unhappiness, just a little unhappiness, then it could open up an opportunity for me to experience total bliss. I love the illustration on the page next to it as well. You know, that's, you know, that illustration is actually going to lead into kind of why I chose these poems. So the second one is in the section of Tyrone, and that it's on page 110. It's called Spread Love. So I kind of coupled these two together.
There.
Cool. So Spread Love. It was only in that moment of letting you go that I learned the way to spread love is to live free. You embody all that is love. You promote it in the way you move. Your swagger speaks of love. Love is in the warmth of your eyes, the beauty of your smile. You carry love in the movement of your hands. Even the clothes you wear speak of love. I hear it just as my heart did when we first met. My heart heard and listened. Love, I am still listening. So it's funny. It must be interesting for you to hear folks reading such intimate, you know, like expressions from you. And like one of the things I do want to highlight is, you know, the fact that you have people reading your poetry is kind of a testament to the fact that like you almost view this life or these learnings of life as something that, you know, is not your property. It's kind of like, you know, these things flow through you, and and you find your liberation through, you know, sharing these experiences, because so many people can relate. And so many, like when I was reading this book, it was just like, wow, you see me and you speak of love the way that I understand it to be. So, you know, I just want to highlight that. And the poems, the reason I matched them together is because, like, you know, these two poems to me kind of represent the dissonance that we sometimes feel between our hearts and our minds. And it really is the acceptance that, you know, two and more complexities within us can be true and exist at the same time, right? And a lot of the poetry in this book is like really, really sensitive things. And what causes us to even label them as sensitive is the fact that when we see them, we typically run away, or we put up a veil, or we, you know, don't know how to handle them. And when we run from things, we don't become fluent in them, because at first sight, we're gone, right? And so, like, a lot of these poems are acknowledging that multiple things exist within us and looking at them without judgment,
right?
But rather kind of as they are, as they exist within us. You know, one of the quotes you used in your book was the idea that you can only coax someone into the vortex from the vortex,
Yes.
right?
Esther Hicks. Yeah.
Yes, Esther
Yes.
Hicks. And, you know, so like, as I'm reading these, it's like, you could only speak of these things if you dance with the vortex, you know? And so, and I love the way that you end it with love, I am still listening, you know, because in that sense, it's kind of like, you know, love is something that is beyond the physical realm that we live in, beyond the, like, you know, our lived experience. Love exists. And so a lot of times we'll have experiences and we want to wrap, you know, love in a bow and be like, that was love, or like try to embody it in a certain instance. And it's like, you know, things like love, things like hope can't be defined by the individual instances that we have. We can see it in them, but, you know, the thing exists beyond us, you know? And so we don't have that. That's not our property, you know? That's kind of the world's property, or the universe's property. So I just appreciate those two poems put together, because I felt all of it, you know, like I felt it from experience, and then reading it again, it was like, you see me.
Oh my gosh. And you know, Pat, that's what leads me to, I have so many questions in my head for you. But this term, dance with the vortex, I want to rewind a little bit, or maybe ask that you pause there. And can you talk about that? Because this is something that I want to take up. I've already told you that when we go live again, you know, post the Rona, and start doing live events, we've already talked about you know, coming with me and engaging in conversation with me, which is another reason why I'm so excited that we're here today. And when I hear this term, dance with the vortex, it makes me want to stop. Can you say more about that? First, why you chose that language, and then can you talk about how you may have danced with the vortex as it relates to love? Absolutely.
Yeah, I think dancing with the vortex, to me, gives it almost like a playful nature, you know, like, so the vortex, I'll say that, you know, like love, for example, for me has been what, you know, the deepest lessons that I've learned in life have come through situations associated with love. You know, I can't think of anything else, you know, like my job doesn't trickle down into every element of who I am. Family is close, family and upbringing, but again, that's like tied to love. Like love to me, whether romantic, whether familial, whether platonic, has been a reflection to the parts of myself that are broken or need healing. And so they teach me lessons, and sometimes I'm in the depths of the vortex, so I can't understand what I'm meant to learn from this experience in the moment. But every time, you know, if you add the element of time and reflection, there's always clarity, you know, afterwards. And so like when I say dance with the vortex, like the vortex to me is that encompassing feeling where it's like, you know, I've gone through situations where I perceived it to be heartbreak. And, you know, when I'm feeling heartbreak, when I go to work, I'll stare at a computer screen for 2 hours and not be thinking anything other than the experience, right? And that is the power of it, is that it kind of engulfs you, and it engulfs you when you didn't ask it to, you know, like it will find you, you know? And so when I say dance with it, it's kind of like in the beginning, it's scary because you don't know that you're dancing with it. But over time, when you don't run immediately when you're feeling these things, when you sit with how these things are affecting you, you actually can reach your hand out and ask it to dance.
And get in rhythm with it.
Exactly.
And get in rhythm with it.
So, you know, like because what I love about your writing as well is like, it's talking about love. It's talking about something that's familiar to us, and it's doing it in a way of artistry, right? Like humans are predisposed to like have storytelling hit them more than like stats and facts and things like that. And so the way that you kind of write in the book, it allows for us to have so many entry points to, like, you know, we may not experience the exact same thing, but we know what you're talking about.
Wow, thank you for that. You know, it is very humbling to engage in these conversations with people I love, with people I respect, and to hear, you know, how you perceive this book and the entry point. I still want you to, you know, when we talk, this is what happens to us. I'm going to try to contain. I still want you to talk about how you've perhaps danced with the vortex in love. But when you talk about this idea of entry point, what was your entry point to opening up yourself and reflecting on your story in the book? You know, we know the book is in 7 chapters, the first 6 dedicated to the lovers that I've had over 30 years of my life. And then the last chapter specifically around dedicated to various loves of my community, love of justice, different types of love. What was your entry point to the opening of yourself, or the beginning of the dance, if you will? Could you share that, and then talk about dancing with love in the vortex in your own life?
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for asking that. I think that when I was reading, you put in lines in the book that are kind of like, I remember reading them and being like, wow, like that hit, because a lot of times we don't want to hear the truth when it's something that we haven't discovered yet. And so, you know, like, for example, on page 3, you, in one of the poems in the Joseph section, I think it was like towards the end, you said, "Tell me that a friendship like ours can only remain if we agree to never look into each other's eyes." Right? Like that idea that we know that we're flirting with something that could mess up, you know, a true friendship, and the simple act of looking in each other's eyes, which is like the most human thing to do, you know, that could break that line, you know, and like that it's so kind of just raw, you know, like, and those are real feelings. And then there was another one in Joseph on page 13 where you said, it's quite a challenge, you should know, for me to continue with the mundane and the trivial when visions of you are the competition. You know, like the way that you package that, it's just like, you know, the fact that there is competition, because we don't acknowledge that our minds, like, things are competing for our minds and hearts every day, constantly.
Every minute.
Yeah. So like things like that really, you know, I'm appreciative of the art of poetry, and I'm appreciative of, again, like, you know, social psychology and the way that our minds work. And so when you couple the two, and it just like hits, like there was no explanation needed for me to understand what you meant there.
Wow.
You know? And then like tying it back to, I guess, my experiences with love, like, you know, after much reflection, because you've been with me, I've been, you know, like I've been honored to have you as like a confidant and someone that I can just like talk to when I'm feeling in the darkness. And you've seen me, you've seen the way that it engulfs my being. And I think that like one of the hardest things for me was acknowledging that a lot of the ways that I envisioned love in terms of like a romantic relationship was very conditional, in the sense of like, I would like for your happiness or your seeking of love to be satisfied by me and me alone, you know, in ways that I wasn't seeing until time and reflection. And then also, like, there's so many parts of myself that I'm insecure about, you know, and that I, you know, and instead of addressing the insecurity, my way of addressing it was kind of seeing it in others, and seeing it in my partner. And when they filled that, it almost felt like I was full.
Wow.
But in that, you know, in that moment when something can be taken away from you, if you put all of your needs or questions into another person, and they have the right at all times to leave a situation that no longer serves them.
Yes.
When they leave, what's left, right?
Oh.
And so I found myself picking up the pieces after she had left, and what it taught me is, one, that like pieces, like it was almost like she disappeared, and the parts that I put into her fell to the ground. It's not that she took them with her; they were still there, you know. And so in that sense, it was a reminder that like those things were never hers. I could never give them to her, you know. They were mine the whole time, but I was misallocating them. I was putting them in places where, you know, I wouldn't get the answers. And so I found myself picking up the pieces, and as I picked them up, they almost, you know, seeing them on the ground as opposed to having them be in me, seeing them on the ground almost shifted the vantage of how I looked at them, and understood that like these are things that I need to coddle within myself, and you know, give myself grace along the way, because you know, they were just on the ground, right? So if I put them in, they may be a little bit dirty, they may be this, they may be that. And so like as I went through that process of picking up the pieces, it was like I'm whole, you know, without anyone else, you know. And even when I'm in need of healing, like that is, the answers are only going to come from within, right? And that's now ingrained in me, right? Like, because I think of my mindset back then, and it actually scares me to the point that I lost myself at times. It scares me, and it scares me enough to be a consistent reminder that we have to dedicate this life to understanding ourselves more, because it's a lifelong process, right?
My God, Pat. I mean, there's so much I want to ask. My first question is, when those pieces fell to the ground, did they shatter or did they bounce? You know, and that's the first thing. The second thing is, you know, I need 5 hours with you. And the third thing is, I wonder, have you written any poetry about this? Because, you know, the third episode, you'll be the fourth episode. And I think this is so beautifully working out, is Dr. Naeem Madyun. And this brother wrote kinship poems to almost every poem in Love from the Vortex, taking on the voice of the lover. So let's say, for example, Spread Love that you read, right? So he would read Spread Love. He would respond as he was Tyrone and offer a kinship poem back based on what I said to Tyrone. My mind was popping the entire time I read the poems. But I thought about what you were saying, and I wondered if you have written any poetry about that dance experience, because I feel like it would be in kinship with Love from the Vortex. And I almost see us engaged in a poetry reading back and forth. That's where my mind went when you were sharing this. So talk about, have you written anything? How did you process and come to this enriched and quite enlightening understanding of that dance that you just broke down for us?
Yeah, I definitely have written poetry. You know, I find that the poetry that I end up writing, it's funny how when I go back to it, it transforms itself with, again, like time and reflection. It's like, you know, and it really is a spotlight in time. And so I definitely, and I find that the poetry that I was writing during these times of like darkness, and I say darkness in a way of, I feel like darkness sometimes has like a negative stigma attached to it. And to me, darkness is just as relevant as light, you know, like you have to acknowledge both of them because they both exist. And so when I would write, they would be in very like truncated, concise poems that are like the exact feeling that I'm feeling. Like it wouldn't necessarily be about the person. It would be about the experience, you know?
Yeah, the Vipassana poems. That's what those Vipassana poems were for me. Short, pithy, to the point, boom.
And so I'm trying to, because I think I have a couple written down.
Sure. And as you look, can I just make a comment? I want to give a shout out to Brother Kareem, who is a former student of mine, and I'm forgetting his incredible business that he runs. And it's kind of like in my mind, but I'm missing it. But he offers like tutoring services to over 10,000 children. So Brother Kareem was listening to a podcast I did the other day with Shamari Reed about love and about love from the Vortex. And I always say this thing about folks who are doing the work in schools, that if your heart is dark, the work will be dark. And the other day, I was just talking about that, and I qualified it. And I qualified it more, connecting it with evilness, with darkness, and lightness with good. And he texted me just yesterday morning. He did not know this other conversation I had. And he said he was listening to Lisa Delpit, who talked about a dark heart and the Malian sense, which is something that's beautiful because it's connected to dark people like us. And so he said, moving forward, as you talk about darkness and the dark heart and dark work, you should qualify the difference between evil and good. And so I'm so glad that you said what you just said, because in that darkness, you know, can also be quite beautiful, because the darkness can make you sit still. It could make you just be present and not have things where the light exposes things. The darkness can also expose things, but it's a different kind of vision that we're using. So I thank you for that, and just really having us be thoughtful about the language that we use, and particularly the context in which we use language. So I just wanted to riff off of what you were saying with darkness, and also give you some time to find something.
Yeah,
you know, I know how to fill space, boo.
Yeah, no, you killing it. And so, yeah, I found one poem that, again, it's really short, but you know, it's just like, I feel like part of the release for me during these times is to, sometimes you have things in your mind just bottled up. And, you know, I know that from taking your course, like one of the things that I always bring into the spaces I'm in is like that idea of writing for full presence.
Yes.
Where it's like, you know, even if you don't know what you want to write, just write, you know, and continuously write until, you know, 7 minutes is up or however long, just because we have so much within us that we don't have an opportunity to just put out into the ether, you know? And so I appreciate you for that. And so like, that's what these poems serve to me. So one of them, for example, would be like, that was the hardest part about forgiving myself, realizing I was so focused on keeping you that I never gave you a reason to stay, you know? And so like thinking about just like, you know, sometimes we're just so in the depths of like, you know, what we want, that we're not paying attention to the fact that like the world kind of has its plan, or, you know, the world is revolving as well, and that the world isn't revolving around our understanding, you know? And that's kind of like Du Bois talking about double consciousness. It's that constant understanding that there is, yes, our self-perception, our understanding of selves, but also our interactions with the world, you know? And sometimes when it comes to romantic love, we may prioritize our perception over what is existing, you know? And so, you know, it just, I don't know, these are things that I could only learn through dancing with the Vortex, you know?
Yes,
So it's just like,
there's no substitute.
Yeah.
No, say it. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No, I like, but you know, to your point around critical humility, like that kind of is what makes the most sense to me. Like once you dance with the Vortex and you realize that you didn't necessarily ask to, or that you didn't realize that it was happening, you have to almost give yourself to the humility of acknowledging that, you know, you don't know everything. In fact, you don't know much, you know, like, and giving into that, you know, like that's the beauty in life, is that this is lifelong. Like, let's think about what we're committing ourselves to for life. And if it's investigation of self, if it's, you know, searching for that deeper meaning within us and within our communities, like that's fulfilling to me, you know?
My goodness, Pat, so much wisdom here. As we close, though, in our last couple of minutes, I want to ask you to share wherever your thinking is now. And it felt like 2 minutes, but believe it or not, it's been 20 or 25 minutes. We've been fellowshipping and went by quick. To either share something else creatively, or some advice to the audience. And, you know, and at this point, I'm going to go to how you embody as a Black male, millennial, you know, whatever, you know, we all carry these labels, but as a Black male who is chronologically young doesn't mean that you're not wise, and has been in love and danced with the Vortex. What would you say to other men, and specifically, I want to say other brothers, who have had their hand at love, who have given a half heart to love, whatever it is from your experience of dancing with the Vortex? If they were to ask you, hey, Pat, can you just give me some advice based on your experience? What would that be?
I would say, one, the acknowledgement that time and reflection will heal all, you know? And so sometimes when something happens, our immediate reaction is to like, gotta go fix it, gotta go like try to do something to fix it. And sometimes that can only deepen the wounds, right? Like sometimes time and reflection is really what you need. And being able to, like, I think that what I'm building a literacy for is realizing in the moment, you know, like we all have those times where we leave a conversation and we wish we said something, we wish we said that, and that adds to the trauma that we feel about the situation. It's like, I could have done this differently, could have done that. And so one, you know, don't look in the past and hold regret, like learn from it and everything like that. And as a preventative measure moving forward, start sharpening your skills around like understanding your triggers in the moment, so that like, you know, one of the things that we talk about at work is like the practicing of healthy comeback lines, where a comeback line would just be around the notion that I've seen this before, I've been triggered by this before. And so as I like reflect back on it, how can I be aware of it happening in the moment and accurately share how I'm feeling about that, right? And, you know, even if that means that I'm realizing that I'm triggered right now and I have to remove myself from the situation.
Yes.
You know? And so like, I think that we like, the society that we live in, obviously there's gender roles that play a part. There's all these social categories that come with their own stereotypes that we give into, that we combat. And specifically for men, specifically males of color, the showing of like sensitivity, the showing of empathy and things like that has not been something that is readily accessible within the stereotype of our shell, of our bodies, of the way that we present. And so sometimes when we feel something, we feel like it won't be received unless we are giving it in the way that society has taught us they receive us.
Yes.
So like, I guess my advice and my just like 2 cents on it all is the idea that like, find those around you that that are also comfortable with sitting with emotions or sitting with thoughts, or, you know, like you need people in your circle that can come in with the foundational acknowledgement that you are not what you seem on the outside. There's depths to your understanding, there's depths to your being. And that community will help you understand things about yourself. Because there's things that a conversation with somebody that you love and adore will show you about yourself that you can't discover talking to yourself or just being in solitude.
Right.
You know?
Right. You need community.
Yeah.
Patrick, that is such incredible. This whole show has blown my mind. I can't wait to watch it back, honestly, and just listen and take notes. I want to thank you for your love, for your wisdom. And I want to tell y'all to look out for Patrick Williamson, 3 Educated Brothers. Please check into that podcast. I think you have 3 seasons now. Is that you? Yeah. King, I always call Edmund, King Edmund. Yeah. And also Patrick wrote a beautiful, beautiful review on the inside of Love from the Vortex. And I'm so grateful to have his review alongside the likes of Dr. Angela Costa and Jacqueline Woodson. And so thank you, Patrick. Thank you, y'all, for tuning in, for falling into the Vortex with Yolie. Patrick, I love you. I am grateful to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for everything. And, you know, looking forward to just keeping building, you know?
Yes, that's what we do. We build.
Yeah. Love.
Love.